And we are live. Welcome to another weekly How Not to Die class. Today's not about chopping throats, grabbing people by the balls, or all those other self-defense skills that someone needs out there. Situation awareness, of course, will trump all. And the first rule of self-defense is there's no rules. Today is about how not to die. And in this case, it's about puncture wounds, slashes, bleeding. So I'm going to start this off by saying this is not a medical lesson if I'm not a medical professional, and I'm simply going to show you what I was taught in the Special Forces about how to stop each other from dying. Of course, our job was to rescue the hostages. That was it. That was our one mission in my squadron. Rescue the hostages. No good. Killing all the bad guys and the hostages bleeding out. Also no good if I'm shot or if I'm hurt on the ground and my whole team has to then get around me and the hostages get killed because they're slowed down. So that's where we learned about these things. These are tourniquets. Now this is a fancy color one. It's very bright. We all carried tourniquets on our persons then. And in fact, we were the only ones in the military that did that, in the New Zealand military at the time. Tourniquets were for special forces alone, not for the regular military. Now, our rule was if there's blood on the ground, you've got to stop that. So in normal first aid, the doctor's ABCD applies. So danger, is there danger to yourself or someone else? Response, can you hear me? Send for help. ABC, airway, breathing, circulation. You see where that circulation is so low down on the continuum there. Our thing was, if there's massive bleeding on the ground, that has to be stopped immediately. There's no point doing CPR on someone's chest if they've got a big hole in their arm or a big hole in their leg, and CPR is making that red stuff gush out. Need to plug the hole or turn off the tap. And that's what this thing does. My one's preset. It's got a rubber band on here that will snap under a lot of pressure. So we use tourniquets. We also use bandages and packing and things like that. But this is the rule. The Americans have one. They have an acronym called MARCH, massive bleeding. I think the next one's airway. So you got to clear the airway, and then resuscitation, something else. The glass is hypothermia. So, like I said, not a exact first aid lesson, but I'm going to teach you what I learned in the Special Forces, and that's how to stop someone from bleeding out. So we carry tourniquets, and the tourniquets were for us. Because as we're rolling through a building, if we get shot, our buddies won't stop for us, because our job was to rescue the hostages. So we carried a tourniquet. Now, for those that, some of you on here, I know have done some high-end classes, probably better classes than I've done in civilian life anyway. And some of you may not have ever seen a tourniquet, and that's okay. Think of a tourniquet like a belt. Let's show you the pieces of it. It's kind of what it is, just a long belt with a belt buckle. Like I said, this one's a different color. It's there for my car. I carry this in my car, and I can see this one rather than the black tactical ones. It's a belt. It's got a buckle, and it goes through. It's also got a lot of Velcro. You'll hear that noise. The Velcro so it can hook onto itself. So the critical parts of a tourniquet is the belt part, the buckle part, the Velcro part, and then this thing here, this thing here, it's called a windlass. It's just a It's just a stick. So this is what the parts of the tourniquet are. Now, if you're bleeding out yourself, or funnily enough, when you're assisting someone else from saving their life, you'll be freaking out and you'll lose this fine motor control. I have never, ever, under pressure, practiced this. And I can guarantee you, under pressure, you will not be able to do that. And I know that because I've studied police officers, SWAT team operators that were asked to write with a pen certain things after certain training exercises, and they couldn't do it because they hadn't practiced. When they started practicing, they got better at it. So I carry, and I was taught to carry, my tourniquets pre-looped. That way I can just yank this. So an example, I'll teach you how to do it, but here's just a gross example. Just for it's not correct, so it's just for the purposes of the demonstration. Here's a gross example. I just rip this. Okay, now I've just used that. Okay, I didn't have to do this. Imagine if I had to do this. Imagine if I had to put this on, hold it there. That wasn't easy, and I'm not bleeding or freaking out. Grab this here, loop this through. I'm only one-armed. Not so easy. So we talked through the parts of the tourniquet. Now we're talking through how to use it. You always I suggest always prepare it like that. You've got the option, of course, if you had to then obviously just take that off if you had to, and then say the person's stuck in a car, you can't get it around the limb like that. You've got to feed it through. That's fine, but the worst case scenario is what we train for. So pre-looped, and I have mine pre-looped. I think down to, I think I had it down to about here. Now, so pre-looped, so we can loop that thing around our limbs. No good for the torso. You can't tourniquet neck, for instance. It's only good for limbs. So the first thing, what we're trying to achieve is we're trying to turn the hose. Say there's the easiest example is, say this is bleeding out from an arterial bleed here. It doesn't matter about arteries and veins and knowing those things. Is there massive blood on the ground? Well, if the blood's hosing out, we need to turn off the tap. Turn off the tap like we do. The way we turn off the tap is as high up the pipe as we can go. So no point in turning the tap off down here. Okay, as high up as we can go, and that's probably about as high as I can go. That's my armpit, right? Grab the end, get up as high as I can go. Okay, that's about as high as I can go, and then you got to make this part tight. So pull that as tight as you can. Stage one, high, tight. If it's the leg, it's right up in the groin. And this next part's going to suck. That's what this is for. This is the windlass, as I spoke about, a stick. And the stick, especially if you're an old fella like me and you remember the cowboy movies, used to crank your belt up with a stick. And that's an improvised tourniquet that can work. This stick turns the tap off. So you see that there? See how it twists? It twists this material here. It'll pull it all really, really tight. It's interesting. You can see the veins already starting to show because I'm restricting the blood flow slightly. My hand's getting a little bit colder. You can see the whiteness there. There's a little bit of lack of blood flow just from that alone. But it's not enough to turn off the tap. It's just for this periphery blood flow. You can see the veins starting to stick out a little bit more there now. You need to turn off the tap from inside. Remember, arteries are right down the inside of things, limbs. So crank this up. Crank it up very, very tight. And then you hook it into this. I'm not going to crank it up tight because I'm going to talk. You hook it back into this plastic piece here. So it's stuck there. And hook that over to keep it still. Done. That's it. It's going to hurt. And then you crank it up on someone else or yourself and it hurts, and crank it up one more. You've only got to crank it up until the hose turns off, until you turn the tap off. It does have something here for time. I mean, gosh, who carries a Sharpie or a permanent marker around all the time? Not me, I guarantee you that. So I don't know about that. We were taught get some blood and write the time on the forehead with your finger. That's what we were taught. It's not really relevant. They've shown with soldiers in battle in the last 10 years, you can have a tourniquet on for up to 19 hours without any damage to the limb. So, like I said, this is not a medical lesson, and I'm not a medical professional. I'm just teaching what I was taught in the Special Forces, and that's one of them. Now, what if that doesn't turn off the tap? There'll be a reason why. Probably because you haven't done this tight enough. But if you wanted to, you could put another tourniquet on. You wouldn't be able to go any higher because it's the highest, but you could put another tourniquet on there if you want to. And for the legs, that could be a really viable option. What about for an amputation? Same sort of thing. You have to turn that hose off. Now, we've talked about puncture wounds, being stabbed, cut, shot, those sort of things. That's one simple way of explaining this. But what about if it's a puncture wound from a tree branch? I watched a guy have an arterial bleed from a finger from a motorbike crash. Turn off the tap. He's gonna die. The hose is turned on and the blood's spurting out. Tourniquet, simple, effective. So I wouldn't have thought before I saw the video that you need to do a tourniquet for the finger, a finger bleed. But if there's massive blood on the ground, that's the only thing that matters. So tourniquet. I'll keep that on for the purpose of the demonstration. Let's say this is just for learning, and you apply it to whatever limb or other things going on. Say there's a slash cut through here. You've turned the tap off. That's nice. Running out of battery. That's nice that you turn the tap off, but you do have to deal with this wound. One way of doing that is to pack the wound. You can pack that with a quick clot or another clotting agent. You can pack that into the wound. You can pack in bandage, or let's be realistic, you probably don't have that stuff. Rip your shirt up and pack it in there. Pack in the wound and then wrap it with a bandage or wrap it with your shirt or whatever you got. I carry these. I carry a bandage like this in the car. This is in the door sill. This is in the door sill. And I've got them in the house, and I've got them in the first aid kits and so on. And this is a bandage. This is a very different kind of bandage. This is a what we call a field dressing in the army. What it is a big panty shield. So a square panty shield that can open up. Think of it like a big foamy bandage. And you put that down over the wound, and then it's actually got a bandage attached, a rollable bandage. And so we wrap that around the limb. So pack the wound with quick clot or the other kind of clotting agent if you have it, or if bandages if you have it. And if you haven't, improvise those things, and then wrap it up with a bandage, wrap it up with an improvised thing, and so on. You could, I guess, thinking about it, use a tourniquet lightly put on to put pressure on that as well over the area. Elevate it if you can. If that's possible. That's also a good thing. My first aid lesson was amputation. Put pressure on, and then wrap it up, and then hold it up, and then if it bleeds through, put another bandage on. Those people, they had no tools. What if that doesn't stop it? The hose is turned on. So the tourniquet, we knew better in the Special Forces, and when I say we, I mean the people that want to keep us alive. they knew that was really, really important. So, tourniquet, there's different kinds, but you need a belt with a buckle, and you could do that with an actual belt. There's got a buckle, and you need a stick. Now, I'll give you an example. A British SAS soldier in the jungle in Malaya. Yes, Malaya, because he's being hunted by the Indonesians back in the 60s. He got shot through the leg. I think he got shot a lot, actually. He jabbed himself with a ton of morphine, and he got his sweat scarf, we called it a different thing, wrapped it around his leg as tight as he could. Then he got his bayonet, his Fairbairn Sykes bayonet, shoved it through and twisted it up, stopped the bleeding. It's covered in mud and all this other stuff, but he stopped the bleeding, and he didn't bleed out, and jabbed himself full of morphine, and 3 days later he was found and rescued, and that saved his life. So it doesn't have to be this fancy thing. It can be improvised tourniquets. Just the belt itself doesn't work. You have to have the windlass. You have to have this tourney thing. That's super important. But yeah, you can improvise anything. Rope. It's important that it has some thickness to it. You know, if you're going to use rope, you'd or string or paracord, whatever, you'd have to put it around a few times. Otherwise, it's going to really cause some damage to the tissue around it. So yeah, there we go. Tourniquets, a little bit on bandaging, a little bit on first aid. If there's blood on the ground, you need to stop that. You need to stop that blood. No point doing CPR on someone if they're bleeding out. Any questions on that? Any questions on it? Please sing out. Happy to answer any of those. Just have a quick look at the chat. I think we're good. I think I've said in one video, I'm not sure, you know, I've come across at least 9 accidents in the vehicle I'm using now. 9 instances I have had to get my first aid gear out. I've never had to get out anything to use to change someone's mind from a car. It's always been first aid. So the chances of you using first aid on yourself or someone else is much, much higher than, and I'll go for America as a great example, than getting your gun out of your car or getting your body armor out of the car. There's much higher that you're going to need, much higher chance you're going to need first aid gear. So I keep it in my car because you always know where your car is, and I keep some gear in the house as well. There's a really cool place that carries much smaller ones of these, about the size of a small magazine. For those that aren't gun people, a magazine that goes in a gun. And I've forgotten who they are. I might try and put the link in the newsletter. But they make a really small Snake Staff Systems. It's them. They carry a small tourniquet. It's really, really cool that you carry in your pocket, so you don't have to carry a medkit everywhere. All right, team, that's it. Nice short lesson. I thought it's pretty important with how not to die. So I didn't put how not to die out just for self-defense. I put how not to die out because it's literally, locking your car door, which technically is self-protection. It could also be nutrition. It could also be, saving the life of someone by doing CPR, by calling 000, all those things. So how not to die does encompass a lot. And I haven't done a first aid lesson for the live class. I've done that for travel, safety, and so on. Really important, I thought, to come on here and do it for you, for the live class. Thank you all for watching. If you haven't signed up for the basic course, if you don't have access to it, please jump on hownottoDieGuy.com and access the basic course. Step-by-step lessons. I think it's 4 hours lessons in total. And, you do them at your own pace. One of the lessons is like 3 minutes. One's like 10 minutes or so on. And it is absolutely brilliant. It's my 22 years of teaching unarmed combat and armed combat. And, of course, you get access to the live classes as well with the newsletters. Thank you all for watching. Again, if there's content you want me to put out, this one was put out to me with a question or request. So thank you for watching. Please send through any content you'd like me to cover, and I will cover that. And see you next time.